That said, there was one fundamental experience that affected me growing up, and that was my mom passing away when I was 8 years old. She passed away from a brainstem tumor that caused a stroke. And for me, I think I went from what would have drastically altered my psychology, and it probably still did, to giving me this internal narrative like when people are around, things will be more okay. And I think that put into my mind, build communities, have people around you, and things will be okay. Feeds a whole ton into everything I do now.
Yeah, it does. Holy shit.
Yeah, to avoid all the feelings of helplessness that I felt when my mom died, I try to bring as many people around me as possible so that I never feel like if I actually need help, I can't get it. And so that feeds in. Like I run 149 different communities these days across a whole different range of things. Even in her loss, the good things that came out are there. So I'd say even in her absence, she still had an impact on me, becoming the kind of person I wanted to be. And I think that's what stands out.
Hello, everyone. I am excited to bring you another episode of Alone Together. I am your host, Mike Ma, and I'm sometimes the managing partner at Sidecut Ventures. And it gives me such great pleasure to bring Mike MacCombie on from Generous Ventures. Thank you for coming on the show. I want you to know we're both Ohio boys, so I'm representing today because the Cavs are doing well for a change, and it's such a pleasure to have someone where we share such deep roots on. And disclosure for the audience here: I am a very small LP in Mike's fund, so I just want to put that out there for everyone. But I don't think it changes probably what we've talked about anyway. So, anyways, let me just shut up and say, hey, Mike, thanks for coming around the pod.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on. I think we've connected in some hilarious circumstances over playing some cornhole in Saratoga, California, discovering that we're from the same city, same state. Basically, I am the autocomplete of your name when it comes to Google search. Basically different by 7 letters. But yeah.
So Mike and I it is a really good Midwest story, and maybe this is what we tuck into as well. But like other things that I think the audience should know about. I'd love to do some level setting with you before we talk about who you are and what you know. And let me just preface this: if you are listening to this podcast and you are not somehow associated with a WhatsApp group that this gentleman has put together, I think suffice to say you're doing it wrong. So with that, would you mind giving the audience, I want to get into our personal stuff because we have so much to share, and I want us to talk about the kind of like how 2 Midwestern kids ended up doing venture capital out of New York. But really, can you just do some level set about you, Generous Ventures, and the fund, and then that can set up the conversation for where we go in a retrospective fashion.
Cool. Yeah, so I am, to give some context, I am at the final stages of deploying my first fund, about to kick off the stages of fundraising for the second fund. But yeah, there is a whole story about the naming of it. I have a different name for Fund 1 versus Fund 2. Fund 1 had a throwaway name, which we don't need to get into that story because that's for more like not recorded situations. But Fund 2, and generally what I call the fund, is Generous Ventures. It is a early stage, pre-seed and seed stage fund, very conservative on valuation, investing in what I would say are the of course companies where somebody can hear about it and say, oh, of course I need that. And that never need a TechCrunch headline to succeed, nor do they want it. What that means is a lot of legacy updating and modernizing vertical software, a lot of B2B marketplaces, a lot of supply chain logistics, a lot of compliance tech, with a smattering of other things. I have a behavior science-based consulting background. So most everything involved in the fund is behaviorally designed to sort of optimize it as best as I can. Think of it like, how you go to a Las Vegas casino and the roulette wheel just like it lights up and it's all things like, oh, that's where the winners are. That kind of energy that you get from it, I try to put into a fund in how we invest and how we support people that invest in the fund.
Gotcha. Lots of dopamine hits from that.
Yeah.
Let's go back, right? Let's it's almost the opposite of dopamine hits in Vegas. We're both from Ohio, right? And I see so much of you in the fund and our background in your fund, and also mine too. Can you just talk about how you grew up and I would love you to pick some experience that you think really shaped your fund and who you are today as an investor.
Well, I know the exact experience is not going to be what you were expecting, though.
Oh boy, even better.
Yeah, so I grew up in like 45 minutes east in the suburbs of Cleveland, kind of in the middle of the woods in a backyard land. Like our street was called County Line Road, right between Cuyahoga and Geauga County. And I was the son of two psychologists, child developmental psychologists to be specific. Did not mean I was being put on the couch and analyzed every day. It was more like, oh, hey, the reason that you make these decisions is because like your prefrontal cortex isn't done developing yet, all these different parts of the brain. And my dad also was is an electronics geek. And so he used to give me robotics ideas and like computers to take apart. So I love understanding that. The energy of life was like we'd go Saturday nights, would be going to the local town, Chagrin Falls, and hanging in the grocery store parking lot or going to a movie. Like that was our idea of like an active night. Maybe go putt golfing in our local Dairy Island mini golf course in East Cleveland. And so that was that. Now, that meant like driving everywhere, kind of not the New York City realm of like, oh, I can walk 10, 15 minutes and I'm in an event or a restaurant. That said, there was one fundamental experience that affected me growing up, and that was my mom passing away when I was 8 years old. She passed away from a brainstem tumor that caused a stroke. And the reason that was, well, obviously why it's a fundamental thing, but the reason why that actually plays so much into how I live was back in the day, like we were trying to figure things out, me going into second grade. And I remember going to other kids' houses after school a lot. I was like, oh, it just seems like they're being very friendly and hosting. And realizing that, allowed my dad to work longer hours, etc. The most fundamental thing I remember was people showing up at our door with aluminum foil platters of like lasagna and casserole and things like that, just to make things a little bit easier. And for me, I think I went from what would have drastically altered my psychology, and it probably still did, to giving me this internal narrative like when people are around, things will be more okay. And that strikes very true. And I can even feel the emotions coming up very deeply as I say that. And so a lot of memories for me was when I felt like I was around people and present, I felt great. When I was not, I felt kind of existential malaise, you could say. And I think that put into my mind, build communities, have people around you, and things will be okay. Feeds a whole ton into everything I do now.
Yeah, it
where
does.
to avoid,
Holy shit.
yeah, to avoid all the feelings of helplessness that I felt when my mom died, I try to bring as many people around me as possible so that I never feel like if I actually need help, I can't get it. And so that feeds in. Like I run 149 different communities these days across a whole different range of things. I have a community for all of the investors in my fund where we talk about deal flow and other things. I could never move to North Dakota and live on a farm because I just need to have good, great, interesting, wonderful people around me. That's just where I feel most at home and in my happiness.
Wow. I don't know why I'm taking a beat because that's a lot to process. How do you think that we'll talk about the functions of how you manage this. I'm just curious, like what goes through your brain and heart as you have all these, as you're scrolling through your WhatsApp group. And I'm curious about how you connect the dots between that experience and what you get out of these groups from that experience with the death of your mom.
I think it's one, knowing that if anybody needs help from me, I can usually get them support with one text message. It's like, hey, you need help with this. I have a place to go. I think that I rarely ask for help. Like I do not like to do it unless I need it because I want to know when I need help, I actually can get it. But that idea of like, it's the ultimate agency hack. I feel like I have high agency because I always know where to go when I have a need, even if I don't know what the answer is. And so it's wonderful. I feel more empowered and efficacious in the world than I ever could have imagined just because of the fact that that happens. And so for me, it's that. I think for my fund, it's great because if the best way to never feel helpless and alone is to build every single room where people gather. And when they do that, like you're always able to be part of the conversation. I think I avoid being excluded if it's like a unreasonable reason. And the best way is to make sure that you're running the thing. And it's great to see all the things that happen. I index high on serendipity in life. It's like the ultimate revenge helplessness hack of like, yeah, I'm not going to be helpless because anything can happen. And so these troops also feed into that.
So, okay. I get the communities in terms of answering some of the feelings about loneliness, etc. But then, and the WhatsApp answers this, but then why a fund and why a solo GP? Because if I had to think about, or I'll just speak for myself, things that are hard to make me feel incredibly lonely and helpless, Yeah, this is that. That's why I started this pod. So answer me this. Why venture and why solo venture if the goal was to avoid feeling alone and helpless? Unless you never feel alone and helpless, then God love you, because I don't know.
Well, there's some hilarity to that because I would never have predicted getting an adventure early on.
So yeah,
Uh,
talk us about that. Yeah, connect the dots for us on that.
so when I was in college, I went to Brown. I studied economics, public policy, and education history. So it was all these different social systems of like, why do we govern the way we govern? How do we learn? How do we make things? I even was exploring any social system I could. I joined Greek life mainly because I wondered what the heck made the sociology of a fraternity work. I am by far not a normal
You
fraternity
are
fit.
the furthest. I can imagine being in the frat guy.
And you could ask anybody who was in my fraternity, like, yeah, Mike was like an oddball. I was like, yeah, I know. But doing that, I worked for a politician, I worked for a charter school, and I worked for a startup in my sort of summers of learning. My first career, I was a teacher. I taught middle school students with special needs in the South Bronx and Harlem, which, if you think running a fun solo GP is hard, that makes every job I've had since then feel easy. Like, there's still long hours, there's a lot of stress, but like the emotional labor of giving your all to people in hopes that they can have a better trajectory is insane. I did do, some people will ask, like, did you do Teach for America or something? Like, yes, I did TFA for 2 years and I stayed on for 2 more years because I wanted to become as good as I could at it. So I needed more of all the fun. Did that. I ended up getting very good results and impact and efficacy and feeling like I actually finally hit my sort of 80% of strength as a teacher. And the reason I got into VC was another weird chapter. I follow my curiosity. That's like the number one thing. If I want to learn about something, I do. I remember going to a startup launch event the spring of my final year in 2015. And I met this guy named Danny Quick, who is a close friend, and we've collaborated on things before. And he showed me, oh, I'm working on this app and this thing. It's like, holy crap, I haven't had this much intellectual stimulation in a good long while. And I said, I have to be around that. So started working myself to go to VC events or startup events and all that, hoping that maybe I'd find a startup where I wanted to work and give my all. My brother was a founder of a tea company. So CPG of all things is the most brutal of startup foundings because it looks great, but the margins are low, the raises are tough.
Ed tech, CPG, it could be a close one, but they're both.
Oh, ed tech, CPG, anything where it's like, it feels good and it's real, it's the hardest thing. And I was like, he gave his all. I think he put 7.5 years into it and he did a lot of work on it. I was like, if I'm going to do that, I got to be all in. Didn't find a startup where I was that convicted on it to put the same effort I did as a teacher. And while I was looking, also, by the way, try being a former teacher and telling people in tech, like, oh, yeah, we'd love to get into startups and stuff. Eyes glaze over. They sort of like, uh-huh. Maybe you could get like a CX job at an ed tech startup. I was like, okay, screw it. I'm not doing ed tech. Anything else? I'm not going to feel helpless. So did that. And I started building communities, the thing that I know. I'd hear somebody say, I can't be vulnerable. I was like, what if we build an event series where you can be vulnerable? Like all that. But it started because I met somebody who was a behavior science based consultant. And he would tell stories of like different behavioral research and how it impacted people. And I said, wait, I'm learning more again than I was learning before learning about a startup. I geeked out, started working with him for a year, did all these behavioral design focused consulting projects. How do we make this referral program more compelling? How do we make this event series more intriguing to get influential people to go to the WNBA? How do we make this conference more memorable? How do we help curate this tech community for this tech company? All these things is sort of what I learned in public policy and education. I got into behavior design. I only mention that because I was so geeky about behavior design. I said, oh, this has got to be something I use. I would find patterns in human behavior that were hard to break. I'd build communities around them. And I just kept doing it. And then I met somebody who worked in venture capital at a fund, and they were building things that helped a bunch of startups. And I said, oh, I don't have to work with one startup. I can help a bunch. I get some agency to choose which ones. I get to build things that are behaviorally interesting. Turns out that person was leaving their fund soon. I applied after applying to other jobs, and then I got it. So I joined a VC fund to basically geek out on building stuff for people, learn a lot, and see what I could do. Loved it. Went kind of crazy. I was writing 2 newsletters a week, moving our open rates from like 15% to 72% just because I threw in behavioral hacks of how to make it actually compelling. I think I maxed out at 188 events in 2019 and 311 virtual events in 2020. I kept exploring and I wanted to build. All that said,
That's crazy.
I'm
tired listening.
I got really geeky about it. And I started angel investing in companies where I was like, oh, this makes sense. And the fund I was at wasn't going to do it. And so I ended up doing that. All that said, when I left that fund, I said, I really want to see what I can do if I infuse these things that are behavior science concepts into what a fund looks like. Because I see people running funds. I invested in one fund. It was like, but I think there's so much more we could do. You know, oh, you passed on a deal, never share it with other people because it's bad signal. I said, no, screw that. I've seen good deals. Everybody has a different taste profile. So I started doing that, and I built these pre-seed deal flow calls that you've been part of for a couple of years now, I think.
2-3 years, I think.
So the really long biographical answer made short, I geek out about what's possible. I like figuring out what can we do to build more agency for people in the world. I love the stimulation of tech, and I wanted to build. And I was like, I like this investing thing, but I think I could just even improve upon that. So I had this crazy idea of doing a little fund. The first two people I mentioned it to committed within 10 minutes of me bringing it up. Like, oh, yes, I'm in. And I said, okay. I set out to raise like a 500K to 750K fund. And then all of a sudden I'm raising a 1.1 million fund. And now I'm finishing up on 2.5 as the final AUM of fund one. That's how I got into VC. It was like a lot of curiosity, a lot of applying the stuff I geeked out about and putting it into VC where I was intrigued. Doesn't mean it's easy, but still way easier than what I used to do.
Fascinating. Okay, so bring you up to why you got to a fund and built, angel, VC, became an angel, got 2 yeses, made a fund. Tell me about WhatsApp. Like where was the insight of like, hey, let's do WhatsApp groups? Because it's so much part of your function and brand. And what tell me about where that insight came from and
the
evolution.
It was the anti-pattern. Yeah, it was the anti-pattern. I was like, there were some communities for like New York City VCs. There was one that a fund in New York ran for people on Slack. And I was like, one, I don't want to check Slack. It's not mobile friendly. It's not easy. But also that community was kind of dead. There wasn't much going on. I said, like, we can make a better community where it's all there. So I just started adding people to the community. It's like, hey, I'm going to build a group for New York City venture capitalists. Every person I met, I kept adding. And I know at least 666 VCs in New York because they're all in the group. And I just kept doing that. And then I said, wait, what if we had a room for early stage investors? Okay. I'd meet a bunch of people that were at family offices. Oh, what if we did something for that? I'd meet a bunch of people that were angel investors. And then it's like, oh, fintech investors. I don't know who I know. So it was 3 things. 1, I thought I could do it better and make a better community for the ecosystem. 2, I am grateful that I meet a lot of people and tracking all of them in some CRM. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. So I just put them all into a group. So I'm like, if I have a fintech deal, I don't have to remember the 5 people that invested in fintech and put it into some Salesforce database. I just put it into my fintech investor WhatsApp group. And if anybody wants to take a look, they look. So I just kept adding it every time there was that doesn't exist. Well, let's just put it in. So I now run groups for everything from the big ones like ed tech, fintech, health tech to the future of family investors and energy tech and utilities and
weird
defense
deals,
tech.
Right? You have a weird deal group.
I have one for weird deals and I have one for boring deals and I have one for Phoenix deals. I have one for startup M&A in case you're like a company that's at $1 million ARR and you're trying to sell because you're not going to get to venture scale. So I try to do a little bit of everything. And so, yeah.
How do you keep it all in order? Like I'm a user of these groups and I can't keep up with everything. You as the administrator and facilitator, what is the mental model or scaffolding you have to keep all these balls in the air? What does it look like, both descriptively, graphically? How do you do it, dude?
So I'll see if I can show you a little insight on it. There's 3 things. 1, it'd be insane if I let it be a free-for-all. It's like letting everybody speak up in a classroom. It's like, no, raise your hand when you have it. And if you're going to say something
If you are part of any of these groups, please leave a comment if you have been disciplined by Mike in one of the groups. And I was like, oh no, I don't want to upset him.
The rule for the groups is if it is not relevant, it doesn't go in. So like you can see very briefly, like I deleted somebody's message here and it's just because they put an event plug in across 5 of my groups without any context or anything. I was like, okay, I can see what you're doing. The rule is if it's meaningful for everyone to see it, post it. If it's not, you don't need to put in a DM. Like you can't put in a message like, I'm going to DM you. Just DM them. Not everybody in a group needs to see it. So that's 1. 2 is I have search terms that I use. So if you put Mike's folks into the phone, and the nomenclature is also by color and emoji. So purple is for a different type of person. So LPs, founders. Orange is for like a job related thing. Yellow is for a sector. Red is for a specific function. And then I have everything ranging on the emojis. So I can tell, for example, without even reading the title, this is my SFVCs, this is my health tech investors, this is my enterprise SaaS investors, this is my longevity focus investors, because the emojis in that work. So I just search Mike's folks and it's there. And because it's not very noisy, I can usually keep up with it if I'm checking every little bit on it. So yeah, it's a lot, but if you manage it right and people only say when things are meaningful and you're willing to check your phone a little bit more, it works.
Have you used any of the AI agents on top of WhatsApp to facilitate some of this? No, because they're not. I didn't think so because you're very manual. It's like, hey, here's what the emojis mean and how you code it, and leave this reaction for this outcome versus that react. I mean, you haven't used any of
Yeah.
the agentic stuff to look. Do you see that in your future at all, or no?
Maybe when I have a fund where I pay myself management fees and I can actually I've taken all the management fees of Fund One and paid it into the fund without giving myself a penny until we get to profit. So a little bit more spread on attention, but I will. I've had a number of people have said, "Hey, Fund Two, I've got some engineers. We'll put something together for you. We'll build you a website." And I was like, "I appreciate that." But no, I'm a I mean, you can kind of tell by the background. I'm a little bit of a Luddite when it comes to some things.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's get into it. Like, there's so much. I mean, there's so much I want to talk about there, but everyone who's been on a call with you always asks this. I think Charlie O'Donnell did this. Like, so what is up with all those post-its? I didn't see this, but someone who saw the pod, I think what Charlie said, like, or someone said, like, oh yeah, he has all these post-its, and someone said, like, yeah, your name is on a post-it, Mike.
I believe it. So it's not just
yeah,
this angle.
My
It's
God.
all that, 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 and that.
Okay.
And even if you like look up like up there, even on the ceiling a little bit.
Okay. Do you have a primer on what these mean and how you organize them
Yes.
and the value it drives for you?
Yes. So it's everything from deal flow sourcing channels, which is a little bit, to anti-portfolio, old portfolio decisions, some companies I was considering, companies I might do, LPs coming into the final part of Fund One, Fund Two LPs who have wired, have said, yes, I want to talk to bigger checks, long-term projects, and then revenue channels. So the whole like, how does Mike actually survive and pay bills is on the purple ones over there. So yes, it's color-coded.
Oh my God.
And no, I am not a serial killer. I've been asked that by companies. Like, no, it's just
there's
how I
no
work.
red lines everywhere. That's amazing. I mean, does this work? This all works for you, right? Like, I mean, obviously, this you keep all this together like that. That's amazing. Has this been iterative, or you just knew that this is where I was going to go with it? I use Pod. I only use it for.
I mean,
I feel like a very.
like the number of. Yeah, I've got them all over the place. I just sort of found my system. It's like, oh, I want to track something. I don't need to move my deal flow sourcing channels around a lot. I just have to like add the ones so I don't lose track. Now, obviously, I'm a bachelor right now. I hope not to be anytime soon. If I can find a relationship, I should be good. I know this will not be permanent, and I should have some humanity and normalcy when it comes to decorations. I'll put it in like one office room or something. But yeah, it works for me. I have my weird systems, but if I need to look at everyone who sends me deals, I literally can look one time through a wide aperture and see it on my wall.
Amazing. What I admire about you is just how you've built structures around yourself, ranging from, this need from help, which I didn't really understand it so fulsomely as I did today, to the fund, to the WhatsApp group. And then the other big part when I think about you is our deal sharing calls. I mean, not our deals, they're your deal sharing calls. And it's such a big, is how I got introduced, and talk to you, maybe describe a little bit what that is, and then how the evolution of that and why you do it, because it is, sorry for the pun, it is an incredibly generous gesture, and it's a huge amount of work to manage. So talk about that, how the first one came to be, and how you've evolved this to now. What call are we on? 76? I can't remember what.
67's coming up.
67, right? So walk us through that, the genesis of the pre-seed deal sharing calls.
So it's been 5.5 years, I guess, if we're going by a monthly basis. It started because of that whole premise that I was at for the fund I was at, where they said, yeah, don't share a deal if you passed on it. It's bad signal. And I said, well, I disagree. So I started it off with them while I was there. And I just got, I think it was 11 investors just saying, hey, do you guys want to share deals? There's a little bit of something. And we just talked about deals and made a few intros. And the thing I've learned is it'll take 1.5 to 2 years of any community or series to really get its own momentum. And I just kept doing it month after month. People share deals. They used to be, they just share the deals like, oh, let's put them in an Airtable. submit them beforehand. I'll pick some of the ones that work, and then we'll present them on the call. To now, from 11 people to 5.5 years later, I average 110, 120 people every call. People put deals into an Airtable in advance. The sooner they put their deal in, the sooner they can see all the other deals. And we'll get 130 or so deals a given month. And I pick the top 10 or so to be presented on the call by VCs or investors to other investors so they can be blunt and honest. Usually 100% of the calls presented get introduction requests. Last call, we had 384 intros requested from that call to companies from it. And I manually enter every single one because if you do a group BCC, people don't feel there's a tragedy of the commons that they don't feel accountable. But if I say, hey, these 5 people wanted to meet that company, can you please make the intros? You do it. And I run it very strictly.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Anyone who attends is required to vote for their favorite company in terms of what's most compelling, what's most unique, and what's the best effort presentation. If they don't vote, I will send an email. I will send a follow-up text, and I'll be like, no, the expectation is you vote. So it's kind of like kids in homework. If you don't do it, I'm going to remind you, and then it's detention. If they don't do it after a while, they don't get invited anymore. So now, normally, if 130 people attend, like 128 or 129 will vote, and that one person gets on my asterisk list if they keep doing it multiple times. But it works. I do it because, one, it's great leverage for me to help founders and also, frankly, to get deal flow. If I say one of my best performing companies came from a cold email because I post on Twitter and LinkedIn once a month saying, hey, you shouldn't have trouble raising just because you don't know people. I'm going to do another challenge. Send me your deal. The top 3 I'll put in front of 50 investors and we'll make intros. Somebody reached out to me one time who had like $24 million valuation, $8 million in revenue, was already like profitable by 6 figures. And I said, why the heck are you raising? It's like, oh, I just wanted to bring in some good people. I ended up investing in that company and they are doing 20 million in profit this year. Right. And so I'm like, yeah, that's what I get. I will not say the name of the company because I cannot mention the traction and the company at the same time. That would be a very bad idea. But I've seen multiple deals that have come through cold that I may not have done, but other VCs have done and they've grown tremendously. But it also means I can help get a lot of deals in front of a lot of VCs. Like my LPs have gotten 372 intros to companies just this year from January 1st to now, and they've invested in 14 of them. So the more I do deal flow sharing to everybody, the more everybody benefits, founders, myself, et cetera. That's like why I call my fund generous ventures. It's like if you have an abundance mindset, a whole ton of serendipity can happen. But yeah, the calls work. I do it for helping founders, helping other investors, frankly, helping investors remember me when they see a deal, seeing deals myself. Yeah. I mean, I run a stealth fund. I don't have a website. I don't have anything on my LinkedIn that says I run a fund, and I still get deals that I think will help me outperform an average fund.
I think one of the things that if I can add to your list, and I don't know if you care about this, but you've really built a community. For instance, I caught up with Rich Malloy from Springtime, and I know he was like, we caught up for a drink, and it's through those calls that we've felt such a kindred spirit. We have yet to do a deal together, but we were just talking like we know we want to do it. And what's been interesting out of the data, I start seeing the same people we ask for intros of the same companies too. And over time, a couple people we like text back and forth and we're like, we should just probably hang out, right? Like we're looking at the same deals. I've been very appreciative, particularly as a solo GP and emerging GP, of being introduced into the ecosystem from like a like-minded game community, right? And you find your tribe. Actually, Christina Chappell from 11 Tribes is another one that just cognitive, like we see the same deals and we've been trying to get together as people. It's been really cool to find your little corner of the ecosystem through the mosaic of those calls.
Sure. And I've looked at deals Rich has sent me, and I know Christina's done at least 1 or 2 deals from the calls themselves. So it works. It's just like a nice little gathering room with a purpose. Yeah. Communities get messed up if they don't have a common context, a common curation, or a common overt value prop. One of those 3 has to be true for a community to function well, in my opinion. So yeah, we get a lot of value and it's pretty curated.
Are there some things you screwed up in community building through the time that as people were trying to do it, like that you would get, so you started going down this? I'd love to continue and learn from some of the things that hit the cutting room floor or failures as those who are trying to build communities. What offer of lessons would you give them?
Yeah, not every community needs to exist. Again, some people will be like, I just want to build a community for good people. I'm like, okay, but what does that mean? Like, what are they getting that's an anti-pattern to what they're used to? Sometimes anti-pattern just means it's better run. but sometimes it means it's something different. Like I used to run a community for people I hated the networking stuff where a former teacher couldn't get anyone's attention. It's like, let's build a community where it's not about that. It's just building connection. Ran that for, oh my gosh, like 4 or 5 years, 3 cities. But there's a lot that say the cutting room floor. I'm sure there's been communities I would try. I think I tried one for like, it was called Baton, where it'd be like, oh, just passing on to investors follow on deals. I realized there wasn't a clear enough context. So now I have a Series A investor group and a Series B investor group. And I just say, this is where we send those deals. So it's usually communities have flopped because they weren't specific enough or they weren't valuable enough. And also sometimes it just takes, you don't hit enough of a mass. Like I used to put together monthly calls for 21 different functional best practice groups. Customer success, they always love meeting. Engineering, they liked meeting. Sales, they liked meeting. Product design, there wasn't a whole ton. They kind of have their own flavors. There's not a whole lot of information to be given. So there wasn't a lot of overt value. So it really just ranges. But I try not to do events that are communities that don't have a real purpose for existing. And I think that's where a lot of people mess up. They're like, I'm going to build a community. Like, why? Who does it help? What is it for? And they just don't have an answer.
Fascinating. I mean, we could start talking about communities all day long. You know, I love what you do. And like, it's not just digital WhatsApp. I mean, I admire the way, again, you build this scaffolding around you. I always wonder if it's strategic or just something that you derive pleasure from and extract value out of as a secondary. Like, for instance, one of my favorite events in New York City is your Friendsgiving, your tech Friendsgiving.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's potluck. It's warm. We just get together.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe a quick plug or genesis on that. And I want to move into something else because otherwise I feel like people will be like, oh my God, this is a love fest.
Okay, like shut up about communities. Yeah. I just wanted a reason to bring everybody together there wasn't really a good tech Friendsgiving. It'd be like that person with their WeWork alumni or that person with their whatever. There was no general call to that. Like I eat a lot. I eat for 2 people. So a place where there's food and I get to meet everybody and it's kind of an open call. Hell yeah. Plus it's a lot of new variety of food. I've had everything. Anyways, it's just things should exist. It doesn't. And there's a reason why it should. I do it.
Cool. Very cool. Let's get to the GPing side of what we do a little bit and start talking some venture stuff if you don't mind. My last episode I want to run something by you. I had Charles Hudson on from Precursor.
Oh yeah.
And we had this really interesting conversation. Did you read his Substack on what it means to be a venture capitalist today?
I did not read it today. I've been in meetings all day, but
no, sorry. It says,
oh, you mean what it means today?
The title is "What Does It Mean to Be a Venture Capitalist Today?" It was written a month ago.
I feel like I came across it, saw some headlines, but I've been fundraising and deploying, so
I'll give you the top line. I'm curious about your thoughts on this because I've seen you do deals a couple different ways. And the thrust of it was like, what does it mean to be a VC today? And a lot of that is kind of position this idea of artisan funds versus algo funds, right? Like in that, like, look, artisans, like Precursor, right? They'll back founders. They believe in founders. First-time founders don't need domain expertise. And then there's algos, which are like, hey, we invest in YC alums or immigrant founders or, this view of these verticals with certain metrics of SaaS-based metrics. And it's much more algorithmic view of it. I'm curious if you agree with this sort of characterization, since you get to see all these different fund managers and do interest for them in the pre-seed early stage marketplace. And I'm curious if you have generous and you as the GP have a particular way or thought of where you lie on this spectrum, however you conceive it.
Yeah, I think it's true that there are people that are artisans versus algos. Like I know of a fund that literally just invests pre-VC rounds at like $1 to $2 million posts. You got to have a little bit of revenue. You got to be like, yeah, they're indexing on that. I was an LP in a fund that was basically just an index of really good founders in fintech and health tech. And there's artisan funds too. Like I think we can more refine that in like the 201 version versus the 101 of what are the specific factors that one underwrites in those models. So I know the people at Correlation Ventures, for example, and they index a lot on founder experience, the experience of the lead investor coming in by sector. I focus on a few specific fundamentals. And I think there's like 7 profiles of what people can care about risk-wise. There's some East Coast style and there's some West Coast style. So West Coast style there's the sort of top-down pedigree investors where they say, if you were the former PM #1 at LinkedIn or the former head of product at Flexport, we'll invest. We don't care what you're doing. I've met pre-seed funds that do that. Like a 4 is very much like pedigree. You got a background, You've done something, great. There's others that are very much on big ideas, like it's going to be $1 trillion company or it's going to be nothing. I know an investor who's invested in a robotics company and it's going to be insane or not. There's other ones where it's sort of like we want the thing that's got a high velocity upside, and if it goes to zero, it goes to zero. On the other side, there's what I call more East Coast styles, where it's, first principles, fundamentals. Does this make sense as a company? Should people buy it? Hustle fund is very much like, are people very strong on their iterative hustle and how they build and how they sell? I know one of my mentors is a deep P&L investor. He says, I got to look and say, are they over $1 million in revenue? What does their cash flow basis look like as they grow? And are they the people that can grow this out? Like their margins are big enough or they clearly can grow. And they might do some really boring companies in a really commoditized market, but the fundamentals on the P&L are good. I think everybody has those combination of flavors they look at. Like for you, example, and there's some people that are just founder bets. Like you do founder bets indexed across kind of hustle and coachability in meaningful markets. For me, it's a combination of first principles, a combination of founder bottoms up expertise. Instead of I was PM1 at LinkedIn, I was a fourth generation waste hauler and I'm building vertical software managed marketplace for waste hauling. That's a bottoms up perspective because that guy can understand any competitor and know how to do it right because he knows the customer basis. So principles that and distribution leverage is huge for me. I care about people that can get to a lot of customers fast or easily. So that could be high trust, high social proof, or high velocity customer networks where if one person's in, you can get a lot more from that. But yeah, I think there's truth to the Artisan versus Algo, but I think it simplifies it on a two-dimensional or a one-dimensional linearity when it's more like an octalysis framework where there's like, you can be strong in this one and a little weaker on that, strong in that. It's more like, what is the shape of the snowflake if you look at 7 or 8 different dimensions on risk propensity? That's where I think people tend to get their flavor profile from. Like I could tell you any one of my LPs who's a GP, I know where they are on that sort of octalysis, 8-sided snowflake design.
Gotcha. We covered a lot of ground in terms of like the genesis of you as a wanting to get adventure and then a community builder and then a GP to this. If you look now at closing fund 1 and moving on to fund 2, there's a lot of aspiring solo GPs out there or just GPs in general. And you look back this arc of 5 years. Are there advice that you would give to those people who are doing this or things you would do over based on the last half decade?
Yeah. I think one, you're always going to get the most excited about the first deals. Your top 1 in your first 10 will end up being like your 20th best in your first 100, which will end up being your 200th best in your first 1,000, which will end up being your 2,000th best in your first 10,000. So understand it'll take time. I think one thing I learned was actually, if you're coming at it fresh, scale up your conviction and your check sizes as you build up your understanding and your learning curve. 2, I think a lot of people want to raise a fund, but they don't know either 1, why they are the best at something that will make them win, or 2, why they're different. I mean, I run a community of LPs and there's a lot of shiny object. If you invested in those amazing companies, they'll take a look. Otherwise, it's like, why is this person the person that fund should be run by? So I have friends who've raised funds. I'm like, I don't know what your edge is. I was talking to a potential LP for my second fund today, and he's like, what's your edge? I'm like, here's the 5 reasons. And I was like, it's like a guy giving away gold on the street. Like, if you say no, I'm not worried about not having enough. You'll say yes or you say no, depending on if you agree with the hypotheses. Beyond those 2, I think people don't think about leverage. What is your specific accumulating leverage point that people will find off of? I build a ton of communities and stay front of mind because I'm involved in almost everything. Either you're frequently everywhere, you're ubiquitous, or you have a lot of variety in where you show up for people to remember you. Why would you be the first call or the second call or the final call for any deal? And I think all those things, if somebody doesn't have a clear answer, it's really tough. Most people have a 15% close rate when it comes to LPs. I have an 80% close rate when I talk to them because I manage it in just very different directions of minimum check sizes and the amount of value I provide. People don't have a clear enough proof point of like, this is why this fund should be run by me and should exist.
I'm going to jump on the last one because I think it's one of the things that we people can use help with is how do you get 85%? What are the keys to the game? Is it just restating those 3 things you said, reminding about what your leverage is and reasons, but like what would be the secret to success of getting an 85% close rate on LPs, which would be a fantastic LinkedIn article, by the way.
Yeah, 80%, just be clear.
Sorry,
and
I misspoke.
I'll talk about that when I announce fund 2. Fund 1, I'm like, I keep it under wraps except for when people ask me about it. It's not secret. It's just, I'm not trying to advertise it. It's more fun to do that way. I will have raised all of fund 1 without a pitch deck. I got called out for that one time because somebody thought it was because I'm privileged. I'm like, I'm a former teacher. Nobody's going to believe that I know what I'm doing in tech unless I give a reason for it. Like, there's always some white male privilege, but that's like countered by, I think, the former teacher and not whatever background privilege to some degree. There are reasons. One, I behaviorally, we didn't talk about the LP experience.
Yeah.
As an LP, I thought, what are all the things that get somebody to not say no? Somebody might say no because the minimums are too high. They might say no because they don't know that your incentives are aligned. They don't know that you have leverage. They might want to see deal flow, but you don't share it enough. Have minimums that really, like, I run a 2.5 mil fund and I expect to have 249 LPs. Average for people is 10K coming into my fund. Fund 2 will be 10 million across the same amount, so it'll be average of 40K. But I'll bring in some people for $1 million, and then a bunch of people can come in for smaller. That's one. So check sizes, frankly. Two, I offer as much value as humanly possible. I do a weekly Q&A call to talk about deal flow I see. You've been on some of them.
Mhm.
I share most days. I'm not going to say every single day because sometimes I have to travel or a relative dies. Most days I try to share 10 deals a day with my LPs. 2 highlighted as sort of the best deals of them, but nothing is going to be included that's not at least worth a look for the people who are in that sector. I have a WhatsApp group for people to talk about the deals. And if anybody has a specific request, I honor it. So I tell people, like, I had a black male founder who's a LP in my fund who's investing in black founders. I put up a post. First time I did it, I got him 73 companies. He took introductions with 19 and invested in at least one. Second time, I got 105 companies for him. I have a 7-to-1 assist to commitment ratio. If somebody puts $1 in my fund, on average, they'll invest 7 into companies I share with them. And it was hard in the beginning. I didn't have as easy time. So I just kept the check sizes really small and promised to share deal flow. Now I'm like, guys, I know somebody who made $1 million profit this year because of a deal they invested in a year and a half ago. That's 10 times what they put in my fund. So the data points start compounding. And it's also, I refuse to make money until everyone gets all their money back. So if I am supposed to get management fees for fund 1, like let's say 25K or 50K a year, I don't take it. I put it back into the fund and I invest all of what I would have made. If we don't make everybody's money back, if you lost a fraction of a penny, so we didn't cross into profit, I will have done the entire fund for free. Literally nothing paid to me. That's pretty compelling. That probably gets it up from like a 60% to an 80% because they know I frankly give a shit. I've had LPs that have just said, like, I know you care. I know you're going to put your best effort in, and that's what I do.
Yeah, I'll hold off the question of like, are those in the fund 2 economics? But I mean, what I take from this conversation is you put your money where your mouth is, and like really, you've been systemic about what the objections are, and through thoughtful design, just like, okay, well, the objections are all gone. Now, what are you left with,
Yeah.
right?
It's like if all you're doing is trying to fight gravity, the water's going to flow in the aqueduct. It's like if there's nothing that prevents somebody from saying yes, unless they just don't have money to invest. I had a guy who likes my deal flow. I was like, look, you don't want to put in 10K. You can start with 1K. And then if you want to do more, you can do more. One of them ended up putting in more. I was like, cool, that's great. So I'm grateful that I have people that put in more than the average amount so I can let some people in for less. And the biggest thing is I tell people to balance cortisol and dopamine. Put enough that it matters when you get into good email, and not so much that you stress out if you get a bad email. Just if you align things with human behavior, you're building an aqueduct rather than trying to build a tunnel through a mountain.
I mean, like, look, there's so much ground I want to cover with you, but we both have to leave at top of the hour. I mean, I want to talk about like hard things. Maybe we can just finish with what I'm landing on as sort of fast 4 of stuff. Okay. And, so you've done a lot. Can you describe in raising this fund, like, or all your funds, like, tell me the day of your lowest low.
I'm grateful that even my lowest lows don't feel that low. Like teaching, there were some low lows. I'll make it through. Probably the 2 I can think of is I have almost 200 LPs. Like some of them, they just take 6 months to get back to you. I've had 4 total LPs that didn't follow through on their commitment that they did it. And they just like ghosted. I was like, I don't like wasting time. It's like, I don't mind spending money. I hate wasting money. I'll spend time to bring somebody in, but I don't like overusing it. The biggest one was, my biggest weakness was I was raising alongside deployment. And so I had a couple deals I really liked that I just didn't have the money in fast enough to do. And one guy, I had a handshake deal to invest at a 7 post. And then another fund came in and did a follow-on preempting, and I didn't get the deal. Now, it was overpriced for the follow-on. It was low. I was like, I did my best. I did everything to help him, and it wasn't enough. Again, I hate feeling helpless. So generally, I've gotten into deals and done it, but those were the lowest.
What about the highest high? What day story recollects the highest high you've had in building Generous?
Probably One is LPs that came in really quickly. I once closed a guy for $100,000 in 12 minutes because he's like, "Oh, I know what you do. I'm in." It's like, "I won't fight you." Okay. And another person who said, like, "We're in, but we have to do more. Otherwise, it's a rounding error for us." I was like, "Well, I won't fight you." And the other is companies where every call the news gets better and better. You have this J curve in investing where the struggling companies die off first and then the good ones grow, and you just feel like, I'm terrible, I suck, I suck, I suck.
I don't suck.
Maybe I'm not terrible.
Yeah, totally.
There's this one company that you know about that, they were $73,000 in revenue end of last year. They were overdraft on their bank account for 6 hours between fundraisers because of a whole snafu. And they're now projecting $34 million in annual run rate revenue by August. Now, we'll see how that goes. But last time I talked to them the time before, it was 24 million run rate by February of next year. So I'm like, it just keeps getting better and better and better. And they are my biggest holding. So if they raise at any reasonable valuation, I've already doubled the value of my fund just from them. Amazing. So that's pretty good high.
It's pretty good high. Who's been the most help to you in starting this? Anyone you want to shout?
I mean, frankly, every LP has been really helpful. I've had LPs. I won't mention them because I don't know if they want their status done, but there's one who's a lawyer that introduced me to another investor who put in money in fund one and wants to do fund two. There's a VC in New York who just mentioned me at a happy hour and I got the family office behind a well-known brand. So just people who speak the truth of what they believe about me. And also people have just been there for me who'll be like, hey, that's normal that happens. It's okay. It's a first-time fund manager. And as you can tell, I'm all in on this fund. So there's been a lot of LPs, everyone from, I can say like my mentor who knows who they are, to people that I know closely there, to people, we can say one is the lawyer, one's the engineer, etc. But people have just like truly bought in, and you can just tell they're good people that love the mission and want to be more part of it.
Awesome. Last question, and it's amended from the way that I normally ask this one, but you're open. Like, what would you want your mom to know about this fund and where you've built this today?
Oh, that's getting me deep in the feels.
Yeah. Deep cuts. I mean, and normally I just ask, how do you want this fund and you to be remembered? But I think from your opening, I would be remiss as a host if I didn't offer you the opportunity to reflect on that, because that's where this whole thing started. And that was news. We're friends, and that was news for me, man. That was deep.
Yeah. Oh man, it's not just the allergies. I would say what I learned is that Brian Surgetz brought this out to me, a friend of mine years ago, and he said, all the struggles you've had are because of her loss, but all the good things you have are because of who she was while you had her. And even in her loss, the good things that came out are there. So I'd say even in her absence, she still had an impact on me, becoming the kind of person I wanted to be. And I think that's probably what stands up.
Yeah, man. That's huge. I mean, I'll finish with the disclosure. I'm an LP in your fund. I was an LP in your fund before I knew this. So I feel even more strongly conviction on that. So thank you. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that and your story. And I think people know the WhatsApp groups and all this, deal sharing, but I think it's really important to get to know. And I've benefited from just getting to spend more time with you, to know the human, the kid from the East Side, even though the West Side is the best side of Cleveland, in building.
And the Midwest is the best.
For sure.
I appreciate that. I appreciate a chance to talk about real stuff. And I thank you for setting up the context for that.
For sure. Hey, listen, people want to get a hold of you. What's the best way to do it? I'm going to guess what it is, but for the listeners.
I would give my number out, but I don't know how many listeners there are. I share my number other ways. My email is mike@MikeMacCombie.com. They can always shoot me an email that way. And if they want to get involved in stuff, that's an easy way.
Awesome. Oh, my friend, thank you so much for stopping by the pod. It means more than you know. I'm indebted to you for your time and your vulnerability. So thanks so much.
I appreciate it. This was a great one.
Awesome. Everyone, thank you for joining Ma from Alone Together. Please, I forgot to mention, people said like, oh, you haven't asked people to like and subscribe and leave comments. Please do that thing. It really does help as we're out here doing this. And until then, I'll see you next time. And Mike, I'll see you on WhatsApp and another event soon.
I'll see you soon.
All right. Take care, everyone.